It's 6 o'clock. Hello, good evening. Welcome to UPfront. My name is Raymond Dakwa. My guest today has been a former Deputy Minister of Finance between 2009 and 2012. He was the Minister for Trade in 2013 to 2014, the Minister for Agriculture from 2014 to 2015, and in 2016, he was the Minister for Transport. The Honorable Fifi Kwetey is my guest. After the break, we'll jump into the budget that's a day old. You're welcome back. This is UPfront, and my guest is the Honorable Fifi Kwetey. He's the Member of Parliament too for Kwetey South Constituency. Of course, he's been Minister, Deputy Minister for a very long time, but trade is not one of the ministries you've been to, have you? Of course, you've been Deputy Minister of Finance, Agriculture, and Transport was your very last portfolio in the John Dramani Mahama government before you heard it of. That government was given a very bad review by the Finance Minister. He believes that the mess, and that's the term he used for it, is being corrected, and Ghana is spoiling for growth, jobs, and prosperity in the new budget. But there's something currently happening in Parliament. Your colleagues from the Volta Region, and of course, you are the Member of Parliament for Kwetey South, which is in the Volta Region, and even though you don't want to go back to Parliament, the question I'm asking is that they are demanding an apology from the Finance Minister. They are insisting that the priority areas for roads construction in 2020 does not have a single constituency or area in the Volta Region being captured. I've checked, that is true. But the Finance Minister's response is that it's misleading because there are several other projects for the Volta Region which are road-related, which are development-oriented, which are also captured in this particular budget. Is his explanation good enough?
Good evening to all your very many viewers, and it's a pleasure seeing you again, Raymond. Obviously, the Finance Minister's explanation is totally unfortunate. I mean, you know, when you get it wrong, you sometimes just have to be man enough to say, you know what, it's a mistake. Mistakes do happen. I've been in the finance ministry, so I do understand sometimes that mistakes can happen. So please just be honest and say this clearly is a mistake. If it was, I think the senior minister was on another program earlier today.
Yeah, he admits that.
He had a candor to admit that it was an oversight and said the correction will be made. I think that's much more honorable. Instead of playing this gymnastics and said, oh, the Volta Region has some roads that were in another part. Therefore, if in the critical road section, Volta Region didn't feature, it's really not too much a cause to be worried about. Other regions, every other region were in different other parts. Now, so if you were listing critical roads, and there are 16 regions in Ghana, let's even take it this way, the Volta Region actually is an original region. Okay, so newer regions have been made. I can appreciate if you say, okay, because maybe the nature of the new regions, some of the names are not, let's say, finance. Those who help with the writing of this, they are not used to some names and omit them.
And they thought they were in the Volta region.
Actually, be omitting the original, region out of which different.
So OT has specific projects in there.
Absolutely. That's why it's so strange that out of 16 regions. The Finance Minister actually will tell us that somehow Volta Region can be left out of 16. It's strange. It's strange.
The reaction basically is that you're not getting an apology for it. This is not something that is a big deal that ought to be blown out of proportion. And if there's a need for correction, it will not be on your prompting.
I see. Anyway, no problem. I mean, he can decide to choose the option he wants. I honestly would have said that the honorable thing you do when you clearly make such a monumental mistake is to apologize. You apologize not because the minority has asked you. You apologize because you are dealing with what you call millions of people who are in that region and who are going to take exception to the fact that you can have a whole national budget and some way, somehow, forget about them.
But deep within your heart, can this be a legitimate omission? Something that every other person forgot about?
I find that strange. The reason is because, you see, so many different people have gone through that budget.
Yeah.
The budget, after the initial preparation, I mean, comes to cabinet and is subjected to appropriate scrutiny. even after cabinet, when final, should I call it, modifications and so on have been suggested from Parliament, it goes back to a team, and that team goes to not just a team of technocrats, but also a team, at least during our time, of political people as well who take a look at it. In some way, somehow, every single one of these people would not notice that. And again, take note of the word critical roads. It tells you that as far as government are concerned,
it's very crucial.
A segment that is critical. And you're telling me you can see a list of critical roads, and it doesn't strike anybody that of 16 regions, one is missing. One. And it's in that the one missing is the one where the government of the day happens to have the least vote. Isn't that very strange?
Only one seat.
Only very strange.
Yeah.
I mean, so the Minister of Finance, you're a Christian, you know. I mean, so please, sometimes when you're doing what you're doing, remember there's tomorrow.
Now, I want us to move beyond roads. Talk about economics. This budget. I mean, of course, there's a part that the budget talks about being the budget for roads, and that the year 2020 is the year that all the road problems in the country will be resolved because there's been a backlog of them. Money is coming from Sino-Hydro, money is coming from boring, which is also prominently featured in this particular budget, and we are trying to raise money from other sources, including oil funds, to make sure that one of the most complained about issues in the country is roads. I mean, we do roads consistently, and across the country, from the Volta region through to the Upper East, Upper West, there's a consistent complaint about roads. You should be happy that they are going to be fixed, regardless of where they are going to be done. Absolutely. I mean, it's definitely a wonderful thing if truly that were the case. But don't forget, Raymond, that we are dealing with a group that has shown, shall I call it, a habit of talking a lot and doing rather very little. This government? This government. I don't think there's any other government in our history that has, proven beyond every doubt that when it comes to blowing trumpets, they can blow as much as this government can do, but the delivery leaves a lot to be desired. Last year's budget, I don't know whether you remember last year's budget. Yes, I do. In last year's budget, there is a list of more than 100 roads. That's remember, last year was supposed to be the year of infrastructure. That's true. You remember that? Yeah. Good. A list of more than 100 roads. Check through that list. Not a single one has been done. Not a single one of those roads has been done. Project started, commenced. I'm saying not a single one of those roads have been done. It's been completed. Your investigative things can actually do your check and final. That's interesting. Yes. So we are dealing with people who talk a lot, who promise a lot. But you know the realities on the ground. No, it's not. But you see what? And Raymond, that leads us even to the larger conversation. And that conversation has to do with the fact that our friends, first and foremost, are constantly looking for excuses. This government. Constantly looking for excuses. Now, if you have a government 3 years into your administration, and you are giving the country your final budget statements, and you still are looking for excuses as to why you are unable to perform and pointing to a predecessor government, you know what that is? It shows you that you're the most irresponsible government in the history of this country. Are their claims false? Let me tell you, there again, and sometimes I find it kind of strange. The reason is because, you see, I've been in the investment banking industry. Yeah. And Ken, the finance minister, and myself were in the same industry. Of course, he was the MD of Data Bank. At the time, I was working with first Strategic African Securities and subsequently CDH. When I moved into CDH, we were in the same block. Oh, okay. So Data Bank was on the 5th floor, I was on the 3rd floor, and Honorable Finance Minister and myself used to meet regularly to chat, socialize. And I'm shocked sometimes when I hear him speak. I get really shocked and I get disappointed. But then again, I tell myself that's what happens when you enter sometimes into the realm of politics. If you are not careful, you start doing stuff that you actually never believed that you could do. Listen, how can any group that has met gross international reserves of 6.2 billion bequeathed to you, how can you actually say that you met a mess? How can you say you met a mess when a government has left for you 3 oil fields, which oil fields are the reason why your growth today is what it is? How can you say you met a mess?
How can you say you met a mess when you actually make cocoa production at almost 1 million metric tons bequeathed to you? You met a mess? How can you say you met a mess when you actually met, for the first time in several years, balance of payment surplus? How can you say you met a mess?
But they say that the balance of payment surplus was only during that time.
It's what?
It's only during that time, this government's time.
There again, if they did so, I'm not sure the finance minister will have the courage to say so. Because if you actually remember his own first budget, that was the first one in 2017, he acknowledged the balance of payment surplus. He acknowledged that. Now, so maybe over the period of 2 years, somehow he has completely gotten enmeshed in what I call the perennial distortion and a line, and then decide to forget, then it's unfortunate. But you, I know you're a great fact checker. You can actually check his first budget. You will notice we had a balance of payment surplus handed over to him. We handed over to him an ESLA fund of a minimum of 3 billion a year. Really? You call this a mess? We handed over to you a sinking fund that had at least 800 million cedis, almost 1 billion, handed over to you. We handed over to you a regime in which doomsday had been solved. Every single problem relating to energy.
This government says it fixed that problem.
There again,
they say they fixed that problem.
Again, that should tell you what I call serious deception is going on. Because you will recall that in your own multimedia here, then vice candidate Baumia actually took issues with President Mahama by telling him right in your studio, that was before the election 2016, that he should not be expecting the country, or for that matter the MPP, to applaud him for solving doomsday, because after all it happened during the time. So once he has solved it, doesn't matter. He acknowledged, he knows. But somehow MPP assumed that the people of Ghana having some amnesia. They do not remember that the whole of 2016 energy crisis never existed. Never existed. But again, it shows that a bigger problem which actually calls for, I would say, some amount of awakening even in you in the media. Because you see, as opposed to countries where you cannot simply get away with some of these lies, you will be exposed immediately by people in the media who are cross-checking what you are saying and immediately exposing you. Somehow, I think apart from you, Raymond, and that's not patronizing you, a lot of that is not being done. And when you are dealing with a group who are in power, who absolutely have made lying a state-of-the-art business, then we are in trouble. If you and your colleagues were doing this, I'm telling you, they will not have the courage to actually say that they solved doomsday, because you would have exposed them big time. So in terms of the mess they talk about, I mean, the most ridiculous one I heard today was that you were in a mess because you were in an IMF program. I mean, it's the most laughable claim. To say that because a country had an IMF program, it means that you were in a mess. Really?
That was a reason why I went to the IMF.
No, but hold on.
There was a reason why.
I mean, President Kufuor spent several years in the IMF program. And yet MPP always tout the achievement of President Kufuor in terms of the economic growth that happened in this country and the fundamentals that were great. Are you listening to them? The same group of people who actually now presume that once you are in IMF, it means that you are a terrible economic, management person, actually tout their predecessor, President Kufuor, as having done great, even though he spent quite a lot of time in that same IMF. You see the contradiction, but it's not just contradiction, it's just mischief, and to its large extent also an amazing level of shallowness and superficiality.
Now, I'll come to that, but I need to quote specifically.
Yeah.
The finance minister said economic growth has doubled under President Akufo-Addo, rebounding strongly from 3.4% in 2016, the lowest GDP growth rate since 1994, and averaging 7%. So on the average, since 2017, they have moved, they virtually doubled what happened under the NDC to 7%, from 3.4 to 7%. Inflation has fallen from 15.4% to 7.6% in the new series, and he stresses that point because we know that there's some slight change in there. He also makes reference to what we now know to be the case of the banking sector, which he says is on the rise again. And it's on the rise again specifically after going through the banking crisis. He talks about how their interest and other things are improving. You won't dispute inflation. Would you dispute the GDP growth rate? I'm not sure you're going to make the point about inflation being under new series and it being different from the old series. But even that one aside,
let me take it one after the other. In the first place, you mentioned that inflation in 2016 was 3.6, 3.7, and was low.
No, that's
2016.
Growth rate, yeah.
Growth rate, yeah. Sorry, growth rate, sorry. Yeah. You see, there again is, shall I call it what you call a deliberate attempt? And you see, some of that statement, trust me, if this statement were coming from somebody who is simply doing politics, I would say, oh, this is just political mischief. If a foot soldier makes a statement of that nature, I would say, oh, of course, a foot soldier, he's out for mischief. But when the finance minister speaks that way, it worries me. You know why? Because the finance minister will know that in 2016, the major reason why the growth rate was affected was because the major, what you call driver of the growth, which actually was the oil sector, had a massive deceleration because of something that happened to what you call the, how do they call it, tariff bearing of the FPSO, which prevented volumes of crude oil and, for that matter, the oil economy to have an effect. The non-oil growth in 2016
4.6
was the same as the 2017, despite all the massive claims they made.
That's
the
true.
real non-oil growth in 2016 was the same as theirs.
That's true.
That's significant. Let me tell you why that's significant. Because you see, in 2016, we had just barely finished through all the what you call the consequences of energy crisis. We basically have brought the energy crisis to an end. But of course, there's a lag effect of what has happened in the previous years. So if you have that situation in 2016, which also happened to be an election year, an election year normally what happens is that you have a certain what you call slow down in terms of resources that come into your country. Investors kind of adopt a certain wait and see attitude. Even when you're dealing with what you call donors, they normally hold back a little when you're entering it. So having a slowdown in election year, especially when you have such a significant thing that has happened to your crude oil, which affected your overall growth. Even though your non-oil growth is the same as 2017, the finance minister should have known better. But the finance minister also should have known that in that same 2016, almost everyone that mattered as far as economic understanding is concerned, the World Bank, the IMF, the financial market, the credit rating agencies, the investors, the financial, everybody knew that Ghana's economy was going to grow at least a minimum of 8%, both in 2017 and 18, not because of what another future government was coming to do, but on amount of the investment that had been put down.
Was there projection in 2016, the IMF specifically?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Now, so if he actually is even boasting about the growth rate that he has come to inherit, not even appreciating that every single one of that growth was on account of the job, wonderful job that had been done for him, it tells you that we are not just dealing with political mischief here, we are dealing with what you call somebody who is an ingrate. This is ungratefulness. This is ungratefulness. Because the least you can do, finance minister and your government, is to show gratitude to President Mahama and the NDC for having laid for you the kind of foundation that have ensured that today you can be boasting about growth. Your growth has nothing to do with you, Mr. Finance Minister. It has all to do with investment that have been left by the predecessor government. So the least you can do is to show some gratitude.
But 2018
but
growth fell to 6.3.
21?
18 growth, it fell to 6.3 from the 8.1 in 2017.
Yeah, but you must appreciate that it's not surprising. You know why? We are talking about before the MPP government came into office. Capital expenditure as a percentage of GDP was in the region of 4.5. Since they have been in power, capital expenditure as a percent of GDP has declined considerably. If you look at the average so far, I don't think they've been able to even match 2% in terms of the 3 years that they've been in power. They've not reached 2%. If you put it all together. Now, how do you expect your real non-oil growth to have a growth when you are actually consuming as opposed to doing proper development?
But they have said this before. The response is pretty clear, that they were still clearing the mess that the NDC left in place. They were talking about clearing debt, huge. They are paying huge amounts in terms of interest payments. And if you are having interest payments...
Which government has not had to pay previous debts? Which government? When we came into office in 2009, we had 1.5 billion total debts, which was crippling Ghana Commercial Bank. What did we do? Did we come lamenting? Did you hear us several years on commenting about it? No, we faced the problem and fixed it. That's what you do when you're a responsible government. But when you are not responsible, you are lazy, incompetent, you spend every time trying to blame somebody else. And your fourth budget, you are still busy trying to blame your predecessor. Even though that predecessor is the reason why your growth is what it is today. Even the inflation.
But they're contesting that predecessor in the legislature.
Let me give you the issue.
15.4.
Listen, do you know what it was? It was at 19%.
Which year?
By the close of 2015, inflation had reached 19%. We brought it from that 19% to 15.4%. And even the very first month when the MPP had come into office, before even the final President Akufo-Addo would have named his cabinet and started even any serious consideration, it fell down further. It was already on a downward trajectory. So the inflation they are boasting about was things that we had already set into full motion. So for them to even be boasting about inflation, I find it strange. And beside that, they're actually talking to people who have kept inflation in single digits in this country for 33 long months. Unprecedented. So if MPP want to talk about inflation, the people you should least even direct it towards are the NDC. We are masters at bringing inflation down and keeping it there in the longest history of our country, not you.
I get you saying two things. One, the MPP should be grateful for the kind of growth we had in 2017 because it was purely...
And 18.
And 18 too.
Yes, in 18.
It was purely based on what the NDC had done before.
Absolutely.
But the NDC cannot be blamed when the MPP wants to do so for its inability to do capital expenditure because of the debt situation.
Let me correct that a little. You know, the 8 years NDC spent previously in office, we borrowed in total 110 billion cedis. At the time we took office, I think President Kufuor was leaving it at about 9.8 billion. At the time we were leaving, it was about 120 billion. Even though the finance minister, again, mischievously and deliberately created the impression it was 122, which in our recent press conference, the pre-budget press conference, we called him to order and said he has to actually come clean and correct it.
In fact, the Auditor General and all that.
Exactly. He deliberately used March 2017 as foreign exchange in order to create a picture that the debt that was left was higher. Again, some of the mischief that we are complaining about, which the finance minister has to actually stop doing. Now, if in 8 years we had access to 110 billion cedis, and that 110 billion cedis, which was the total debt stock, total debt that we had gotten, we still can show the unprecedented levels of infrastructure that you can see all over this country today. Whether it is water infrastructure, whether it is health infrastructure, or educational infrastructure, or it's transport infrastructure, or ports, harbors, and all the multiple energy infrastructure, bringing to an end the whole doom solve, which previous government could not solve. We solve it. You understand? Handing over to you two, massive oil fields, which are the reason why you are talking about growth today. If we can talk about all that, what about you in just less than 3 years? Do you know how much debt we have collected? Almost 90 billion cedis. Exactly, it's 88.5 in less than 3 years. Now, it means that they are just short of 20 billion. If we had 110 in 8 years, you in 3 years, in fact less than 3 years, you have actually gotten almost 90. So 20 billion short. And you are telling us that, well, the reason why you are unable to show any infrastructure development is because of the debts that we left behind? The debt we left behind? After you have gotten almost 90 billion, you still can show nothing? You are using all the money for consumption? And you actually have the boldness to tell the country that they should be grateful because, you are put money in free SHS and put money in NAPCO. Do you know what all that amounts to? If you put all that, and Raymond, again, I urge that you do that because you are capable of doing it. Put together all the flagship projects that they've done and put the amount that they've spent in them. I'm telling you, all of them put together, you will not even get up to 8 billion.
8 or 8?
You will not even get up to 8 billion. You will not get up to 8 billion. Free SHS, the maximum you get is about 2 billion. And that's the highest. Then you add the NAPCO that they are even inflating, lying to everybody that they actually are recruiting 100,000 people. When they actually go through the budget, you check the numbers, you see that numbers there would not in any way make them be able to employ that many people. But again, that's the business we are in. They just throw about stuff, hoping that somehow by repeating it repeatedly, the people are going to get confused and start believing the lies. You understand? So if you can have access to, in fact, do you know the total resource envelope they've had? In this short period, the total in terms of debt, if you know the debt stock, in terms of revenues that they have, taxes that they have gotten, non-tax revenue, and everything, oil revenue, we are talking about a minimum of 200 billion. That was even before this budget. The 8 years of the NDC, the totality of our resource package was 240. So effectively just 40 billion short. 8 years. 240 billion
compared to 3 years.
They are now less than 3. They actually have got at least minimum of 210 billion. Compared to that's about 30 short.
Yeah.
And what can they point to?
They have made several references to free SHS they talk about. They also talk about, and of course, some 12.
I'm telling you that put all that together, it's not even 8 billion.
The man puts it at 12.2 billion. Says 12.2 billion has been spent in putting money in the pockets of the people. And he actually has quantified it in the budget. You've seen that, right?
It's the most laughable part of the whole budget statement.
Which part are you disputing? Let's be clear.
Let me tell you why it's so laughable. You know what? First and foremost, if you came into office, and at the time you came into office, you met a currency that at the time was about 4.2, okay, to the dollar. And we were talking about a period where you have actually taken it to in the region of about 5.5. Actually went up, came down, so it's at 5.5. That alone accounts for the massive what you call effect on the people, because that actually creates higher prices. Exchange rate. Higher prices, not just for individual, but for businesses. That's a massive leakage that is coming out of the pocket of people. That's one. We're talking about prices of goods and services. Take fuel prices. In fact, I think a research just showed yesterday that over the period of just 32 months, they've actually increased fuel prices by a minimum of 50%. 50%. The effect on that, on what you call prices in terms of transport, and also the effect it has on food, and the effect it has on disposable income, is massive. That's just two. Now let's go into other taxes that they have imposed over the period. Let's talk about the general hardship that they've created. And you are talking about what? You've given money to education. Yes, which government? 2.2 billion. Which government in the history of our country has not spent money on education? But
1.2 million Ghanaian students at the SHS level has ever happened.
Which government in our history has had access
to school for free?
Which government in our history has had access to 210 billion cedi within less than 3 years, and yet has nothing to show except these people?
But they've shown you what they use the money for.
Listen, other governments with far less resources have been able to do beyond what you call paying what you call a direct recurrent expenditure. And recurrent expenditure for education comes in the form of paying the teachers. Okay, making sure that the facilities, not just the facility, but the spendable things that are used on a regular basis are paid for. In the case of the NDC, we're paying the same capitation grant at the basic level, doing what we got to do at the tertiary level. I'm not talking capital expenditure, I'm talking recurrent. And even at the secondary level, we were paying a free SHS. The difference is that we were doing in an equitable manner, looking at people who actually were far more in need, as opposed to a situation where I'm paying Raymond's daughter, or okay, you don't have it, maybe your niece that is attending some private basic school and immediately suddenly becomes a pauper once he gets into free SHS. No, we actually were doing it in a more equitable manner to ensure that those who truly needed were helped. And then you are telling us that you are doing good to the people of Ghana because you are spending money in what
1.2 million people are benefiting from this.
Listen, I'm saying that the amount of money that they have taken from the pocket of the people far more.
But you have not quantified that to me. I'm looking at 12.2 billion. 1.9 million people have directly benefited from the Planting for Food and Jobs program. And you've been in the agriculture ministry before. 9 million people benefited directly.
Raymond, if you want to be,
they are not saying that they are beneficiaries, as in they have actually.
If you want to be believing a lot of these figures that
you don't believe it.
Listen, let me give a typical example. Why? If you actually are doing as great as you claim you are doing in agriculture, then we shouldn't have a situation where you are still importing maize. In 2017,
government says it's not importing maize.
That's a complete lie, complete fabrication. I'm sure you can actually.
I know that there is contrary evidence as well.
Absolutely, you can actually.
But government insists that is not true. It says that it has seen and it records every single importation that comes into the country. That is not true. Legitimately.
That is not true. You see, our friends.
But you've been at the ministry before. Are you saying that the Minister of Agric is not in the position to know whether or not they are import of what they call it maize into the country?
I'm telling you that the minister is not credible. It's not credible.
But you have not provided any evidence.
Credible. Let me explain to you why the minister is not credible. You know what? You can even do a little check. You know, my constituency, Ketu South, it's a border constituency.
Yeah.
Through my borders in Aflao, the amount of food that comes into this country over the last 3 years.
Maize.
And I'm talking maize.
Specifically.
Specifically. Maize that comes through that border. You talk, I'm sure when you hear
illegally.
What are you talking illegally? It comes through the border, not illegally.
Okay.
I'm telling you that if you go to Aflau and you make this statement about maize not coming to Ghana, I'm sure they will have a good laugh. And I'm sure it's not just through Aflau border it's coming. I'm sure it's coming through other borders as well.
Is it possible?
So when you hear some of these typical discredited stuff, they do it just for politics.
And I'm counting on your experience as a former agric minister.
That's what I'm telling you.
Is it possible that the minister would not know about?
If the minister wants to do what you call one is doing desperate politics, you pretend he hasn't seen. Of course, that's exactly why the minister, for example, yesterday's budget, let me tell you one typical thing, how very discredited our friends are. When I was in the agric ministry, and I'm talking 2015, I moved into agric ministry middle of 2014, and I left there at the end of 2015. One of the major projects I started had to do with what you call a plan to change, to make what you call a vegetable agriculture different. So what we did at the time was to contract an Israeli company. And that Israeli company began for us a project that was going to, as it were, create a means by which our young folks can learn how to do vegetables within what you call a greenhouse environment. And this project started when I was in the agric ministry, 2015. Will be there yesterday, inside this budget, they actually put that project started in 2017. You see,
really?
Our friends.
Which paragraph is this?
I'll do a quick reference.
Okay. Yes, because I've not seen the project.
It is. You check check the agri part. I mean, it's amazing. 2017, this project that I left the agric ministry and then Limuna took over, and then went to transport ministry. It started in my time. It claimed they started in 2017. I mean, so that's what we're doing with a bunch of people who are...
Maybe it was abandoned.
It's not
in
abandoned.
Your absence.
It's not abandoned.
Could you account for it in 2016?
Listen, even when I was in the transport ministry, I knew because our friends in finance ministry kept me regularly updated about the payment that had to be done as a result of the project that was being done. Because that project had to be paid for. So they kept me posted. So I knew exactly what was going on. So for him to actually organize to put in this budget, that project, it tells you alone that they have no credibility. I'm telling you, we are dealing with people who are very desperate. Now, any group of people who can tell you one village, one dam, that has become nothing short of one village, one pond. Any group of people who can tell you that they are building what you call new factories in every district and suddenly go and be taking factories that had been there during the time of Rawlings and put billboard on them that one village, one factory. Those people have no credibility.
Which specific factory are you referencing?
Oh, there are so many.
Specifically one.
I can mention. For example,
because I want to be able to cross-check that.
Oh, you don't. So you've not heard.
I've not seen the project that's been converted.
You've not heard, for example, about Casapreco in Kumasi, a project that had been there.
I know Casapreco exists.
Exactly. And so if you go and adopt a company like that and you put 1D, 1F on it, what are you trying to do? And there's so many companies all over. Raymond, sometimes when you ask me a question, I get surprised because you as a journalist should actually be the one to know this and be informing the public.
You are making a claim that
I'm not making a claim.
A company has been converted by the state under the one district.
Haven't you heard themselves trying to provide what I call a very leaky defense, and the defense they provide is that, oh no, we actually have changed the mandate, and part of the mandate now has to do with what you call stimulus support that we are giving to companies that are in existence, which actually is not the same truth that they said when they were campaigning.
Because district, one factory was
when it comes to
every district getting a fresh factory.
Exactly, and using the resources within that district to build
promote it so that people can work there.
Of course, when they came to office and they saw that the lie is going to now be finally exposed, they shifted the goalposts, and they don't even have the candor and the courage to apologize to the people of Ghana for having deceived them, and then told them that, you know what, now we really can't do what we say we are going to do. So we want to expand it and now give money to some existing companies as a way of helping them to become more efficient. That is what we are dealing with.
97,373 Ghanaian graduates have been absorbed under the NAPCO program.
Yeah.
It might sound to you that it's an interim measure, but Ghanaian people are getting work, they are being paid, and at least, even though there are delays, as has been reported by some of them, some amount of money is going to them.
Let me tell
you can't dismiss this.
But let me tell you why.
Unemployment is a big issue in this country.
Let me tell you why that is really, and it's a good thing to try to provide some temporary relief.
I say that you are opposed to NAPCO.
No, let me explain to you. Any government that actually boasts about providing temporary jobs, that government actually clearly has no business being in power.
The YEA.
When we were in power, no, just hold on. Hold on. When we were in power, I think in 2016, I'm building a case. When we were in power, in 2016, I think YEA employed in 2016, I think in the region of about 110,000 people who were paid. As far as we were concerned, that's the least you can do. Did you see us making them to go to Independence Square to go and march? A celebration? Total disgrace. You are unable to bring what you call an organic transformation of an economy for industries in the productive sector to generate jobs, to employ on a sustainable basis the young people of your country, even though you promise. Then you actually take money from the budget and you put it into something in order to pay almost like national service. And you think that the country should applaud you? You should feel ashamed of having failed your original mandate, which has to do with growing the economy in an organic manner. That's what you promised.
So the NDC never reported in this green book this feat? No, never?
What is a feat?
That he had to actually employ over 100,000. I say the NDC never reported that.
It's not a feat.
I'm not disputing that. I'm saying that. Are you saying the NDC never reported that? In the green
book, our concern was to show tangible projects that had been done using the resources for this country. Projects that actually have what you call long-lasting effects on the economy and on the social well-being of our people. That's our concern. But supposing even NDC reported in the green book, the question I'm asking you is this: have you ever heard NDC actually have a function and line up these people to come and march under the sun? You cannot even pay the people.
I didn't see that happen.
Raymond,
I didn't see that happen during. No, I'm not talking about now.
Okay, during our time.
Of course, I was there when they did the launch. I was at the place when they did the launch.
And did you actually see NDC 1 year on have another celebration? And they actually met again to celebrate 1 year anniversary of NAPCO. Oh, Jesus Christ. How low have you taken this country? President Akufo-Addo and Embawumia. How low? This is what you call the lowest. You fail to do what you got to do to expand this economy to generate genuine, sustainable jobs. And you think that this country should be grateful for what you call national service type of job. You can't even pay them. And besides that, Raymond, I am asking you, let Joy Multimedia go into the numbers for that NAPCO. And I'm telling you, you will see beyond that there is another lie. All the numbers they are throwing about.
97,000 is not real.
Check properly. I'm telling you, just as I told you right now, the lie they told about that Dawinya project, that they claimed I'm telling you the same you will see about this number. These people cannot be trusted. They are people who have no credibility.
Now, there's a point about 83,000 Ghanaians being recruited under the forest plantation program to help restore our environment. We've heard them protest before that they are not being paid when they should be paid, but you can't say they are not real too.
Raymond, what I will tell
human beings have matched
what I will tell you, what I will tell you, and what I'm telling you.
I'm talking about jobs. I'm talking about people who previously were unemployed.
I'm talking about real jobs. I'm not talking about ad hoc, unsustainable jobs. That's not what I'm talking
forest
about.
Guards?
Listen carefully. Listen carefully. The duty of the government is to provide the environment that will enable private sector in particular, who really are those who are custodians of jobs, to expand and be able to employ people.
I see.
If you are unable to do so, and you have to be using all these temporary measures, please, the least you can do is to be quiet. Because that actually shows that you are failing in your main responsibility. So stop throwing these numbers about. You see, a lot of mediocrity has gone on in this country, and we must stop it. And that is not just directed to MPP, it's directed to all the political class. This mediocrity must stop. Every government, if you are not able to do the real thing you got to do, and you have to take some of these indirect ad hoc things to do, please, the least you can do is to shush. Don't be shouting about it. You should even be feeling ashamed.
And this goes to the NDC too.
Absolutely. You should even be feeling ashamed that you cannot do what you got to do and have to be using taxpayers' money to create all these unsustainable things simply because you know the young people will make noise against you. Please, it's nothing to boast about. And I would urge any future government or the NDC not to even make a mistake of celebrating all this. This is just nothing short of mediocrity. Mediocrity.
I'm sure you will reject the fact that 181 companies have so far benefited from the support under the 1D1F 181 companies as we speak today. There is also 19,500 startup businesses which has received training and other entrepreneurship support.
Let me give you a little.
I mean, see,
no, I want to
you made mention of the fact that the money that this government has gotten was huge, and yet you don't see what the money is being used for. This is accounting to you where the money is going.
Which accounting?
It's not the finance
do you know what the money is? Do you know what money there is?
No, you're talking about
Exim Bank that was established by us.
Okay.
Exim Bank that we had established whose aim actually was to support especially the export drive of this country. Because the money that was coming into EXIM was money that we were taking out of the import. Because we wanted to create a scenario where we actually create a balance. We are too import dependent. So we wanted to make sure we find a way of propelling export. So we took a particular percentage from EXIM, in order, from the import of this country to build initially what you call EDIF. And that EDIF is now being joining our time.
But EDIF is still there.
No, we transformed EDIF now to become EXIM Bank. And the aim of it was purely to support the export drive of this country. Now you come, and because of this, your political shenanigan that you promised on the platform, which you know you cannot do, and then you come and then later on realize that you don't even have the money. Because I'm telling you, if you go through, for example, the budget statement, the 2018, the budget, the amount of money that they claimed they were going to make available to the 1D1, if you go through that, about 420, they did not give me even 1 million because they did not have it. So now they have to depend on EXIM Bank. So EXIM Bank will take some money and give to some of these companies. Then you are beating your chest and saying, well, this part of the 210 billion cedis that you have had in terms of resource. No, this is coming from EXIM. EXIM established by us. And you don't even have the honor and courage to thank us for giving EXIM, for you to be using that money of EXIM to be given to company. And you want the country to be praising you. There's nothing to praise you about.
You seem not to be impressed with anything
at all. To be honest with you, as far as I'm concerned, given the huge resource envelope that we made available to these people, the highest in this country's history, this is the worst government in the history of our country. This is the worst.
Merely because you belong to the NDC?
No. To be honest, I think President Kufuor outperforms these guys by far.
Really?
By far. Even though Kufuor still is MPP, outperform these guys by far. These guys, I think what they are really masters are is a lot of noise.
But you condemn
so basically, it's about what they are expecting, what you call slogans, 1D, 1F. 1V1,
which is yielding a lot of results.
1 million, one constituency. What result has he yielded? KVIPs. KVIPs that President Kufuor was constructing using.
A big issue.
No, I'm not saying. I'm not denying.
Yeah, but merely saying that
listen,
KVIPs.
when you get $1 million for every constituency, and all you can show are KVIPs, really, even as MPs. I mean, the common fund which is available to us as an MP that we use to do development, we do far more than KVIPs. And you, a whole government, you can talk about KVIP. You want us to clap for you?
To be fair, they say they are doing construction of markets. They are doing construction of drains.
I'm telling you that
they are doing other constructions.
If you compare the resource available to them, vis-a-vis what is happening in our district and our municipalities, our towns and communities, it's nothing to write home about. Nothing to write home about. And that is also partly because, you know what, they capped the road fund. Yeah. No wonder you see the massive state of disrepair that you see on the roads today. Do you know the total amount they've cut from the road fund? The first year they took out of the road fund 800 million cedis. The second year 600 million, that's 1.4. The third year 1.2, that's 2.7. This year they intend to take about 600. You put it all together, that's about 3.2 billion cedis. That's more than the 500 million they're boasting about.
Hydro.
You see, you check the logic. Money which is available to you through the normal taxation of the people, which is free money. You spend it on the behalf of the people. You actually use it for consumption. And tell us that you've actually used it to pay NAPCO and all that.
But NAPCO is also important.
Oh, brother, who actually puts money?
Investing in human resource.
Who actually mortgages economic infrastructure, which builds your economy, which allows you to grow jobs, employ people, so that those young people can get permanent jobs. You actually abdicate that and say you are using it for what? Recurrent.
You are underestimating the unemployment situation in the country and the impact it has on government stability even as a state.
It's about making sure you use resources in a manner that you actually grow the productive sector so that productive sector can give full-time jobs to our young people.
When you were a minister in this state, there was a grouping called the Unemployed Guardians Association of Ghana. You didn't solve their problems.
You did not, no, because you know what? In every country, there will always be some unemployment.
Yes, but it is particularly interesting when there are people who have had university education.
Hold on. Why?
You should be worried about that.
Are you telling me that between the period of 2009 to the period of 2016, nobody who was a graduate ever got jobs?
Of course, some of them got jobs.
People got jobs in multimedia. I'm sure if you go through here right now, there were people who were employed 9 years ago.
It's not in doubt at all.
No, hold on. And not just here. They got jobs in several sectors.
I'm not disputing that.
When the economy is expanding, you have organic growth, and that brings about natural long-term jobs. Okay?
Yeah.
When your economy is not growing properly, it's just oil dependent. The real non-oil sector is not growing. And you're using all the money for consumption instead of using it for real economic infrastructure that will expand the economy and generate real what you call productive capacity and expansion. What you do, you take refuge in temporary jobs and thinking somehow you can use that to deceive the youth and the people of Ghana in order to be able to get votes. Tell me, the real thing that's going on in this country is simply an obsession for votes.
So you made specific reference to the 1 million, and the minister reported on that. He stated categorically that some 307 ambulances have been procured for distribution to each constituency.
Let me tell you why even that's even a tragedy.
When you left office, there were 54 ambulances.
Let me tell you why that's even a tragedy. You see what?
We have a problem with the 307.
Let me explain to you why it's a tragedy. You know, when you have a fund which is meant for a constituency, the least that is expected is to have a proper conversation with the key stakeholders within that constituency in order for them to let you know the real needs on the ground. There are many constituencies you go, ambulance is not their priority. But if because of procurement politics and what it is that some people may get out of that procurement, you are forcing 300 ambulances on constituencies that do not have that as a priority, what you are doing actually is abdicating your responsibility.
There were 54.
I'm telling you that
there were 54 ambulances in the country.
I'm not saying ambulances are not important.
Yes, but
I'm telling you
it's not possible that all constituencies will have.
I'm telling that in every constituency there are top priorities.
Yeah.
And when you talk to the people in that constituency, they will tell you that this is our priority.
And government
so
believes
if you
that.
have $1 million, what you do is to make sure you are turning to the things that are top priority and then calm down accordingly. That's what even we do. As an MP, if I have access to
But that's what government said it was going to do. Engage the people, get them to.
So his priority is KVIP, and after that come and throw even the ambulances.
But to be fair, they can say priorities also KVIP because sanitation is important.
No, hold on,
we have 5 million of our people that actually engage in open defecation.
You see, when you use those things, it's just throwing.
But it's true. I dispute in that.
No, I'm not disputing it.
Yeah.
Hey, listen. Why? There are some constituencies where they have been able to resolve some of that problem. But the problem they're having right now has to do with educational infrastructure. The problem they may be having is water infrastructure. The problem they may be having has to do with what you call road infrastructure. Yeah. The problem they may be having has to do with a police post. The problem they may be having different level. So what you do is that you have a proper conversation. All these various district assemblies and municipal assemblies have what you call project committees that will be able to tell you the great needs of the ground. MPs, we actually know because we are in touch with the community, so we know exactly what is needed in every community. So what you do, that's what you do. But when you have this what I call ad hoc means, this electioneering machinery, which is simply meant to throw something so you can get votes when December 20 comes, it is an affront to the nation.
You can't dismiss 200 dams that have been completed and 500 that are under construction.
Which of the dams are you talking about?
I'm talking about...
The One Village, One Dam?
Yes. No. You might dismiss it now, but the minister said... Yes, that's what is being reported there.
As a former minister of agriculture, I know what a dam is. And in my constituency, there is a dam.
Yeah.
And dam, the aim of a dam is not simply to store water, but also to create what you call a proper outlet so that people will be able to have access to water for what I call all year round agriculture.
Okay.
If you go and dig and excavate a dugout, and in that dugout, what you call there's no proper canals, no system that are there for people to be able to have access to that water. Even animals cannot have access to the water. And you want to tell the country that you are building dams? I'm telling you that this what's going on in this country is a complete waste of money. Why? Because somehow they believe that we just have to continue throwing these things and be mentioning one village, one dam, one district, one factory, and somehow we win election. That's what is going on. It's a scam. They are scamming the people of Ghana. That's what they are doing.
Sorry, so you're saying that because you disagree on
it's not about disagreement. I've explained to you what a dam is.
The government disagrees with that.
You are saying, but it's not
government insists that.
Raymond, your own station here has done a proper investigation about these dams.
Yes.
You've forgotten multimedia.
I'm saying that
you came out with a proper report, and you went to those communities and they told you that what is being done in those communities is nothing to write home about.
I'm insisting to you that government says for the funds available, this is what it can do as a dam for the people. Are you saying that Raymond, it is something that ought to be rejected completely?
Raymond, let me explain something to you.
Yeah.
What is worth doing it's worth doing well. Okay?
Yeah, that's true.
Good. If you are interested in solving the agricultural problem of a people, you want to make sure you do it properly. Don't do gimmicks with them. Don't insult their intelligence and say, oh, I've given you a dam. For the funds that are available, I've done a pond for you, therefore I'm calling it a dam. That's an insult to the people of Ghana. No wonder the communities, their chiefs, their people are so angered because they feel insulted about what is going on.
I asked you this question, that you seem to be of the opinion that this government has done absolutely nothing.
No, I've not said no, that. No. There's no government in the world
that will not do nothing.
Absolutely nothing. No. Even the poorest government will do something.
So,
but I'm telling you that vis-a-vis the magnitude of the resources that we made available to our friends, vis-a-vis what they have done, is absolutely what you call a drop in an ocean.
But I think revenues are underperforming. Revenues are underperforming.
Revenues are what?
Yeah, underperforming.
Actually, in the truth, let me tell you the truth. It's not that revenues are underperforming. What is that they came playing to the gallery. And playing to the gallery has come to affect them. Because you know what? If you were coming into office and you claim, now I'm coming to reduce taxes, and then you come and play the gimmicks and remove the 1% special import levy and remove the other one, and then later on you come and realize you are not getting your revenue, who are you blaming? Because in the first place, you created an impression that you had a magic wand to be able to unleash hidden resources. In fact, they actually said that taxation is a lazy man's approach to governance. You know about that, right?
Yeah, they move from taxation to production.
Even borrowing, there's a lot of money that is available in Ghana, so we don't even need to borrow. So now you're telling the revenues are underperforming, and who is supposed to be worried about that? Me? Me? You lay your bed, you lie on it.
I see.
That's exactly what it is.
There's a question about what you're impressed with what this government is doing. One major project that you think is in the right direction.
No, I think I'm massively impressed with their capacity.
I hope it doesn't end up in the negative.
To use slogans on a consistent basis and completely throw dust in the eyes of the people.
No, I wanted something positive.
No, but that's a positive thing.
No,
as far as they are concerned, it's a lot of positivity. Because I'm sure they celebrate the fact that, Charlie, we are confusing them. As we throw all these slogans.
You don't like free SHS?
No, it's not that.
You don't want 1.2 million students in school?
No, just hold on. We started free SHS.
Progressively free.
And if you notice what is going on, you'll notice that because of the manner in which they went about it, they even have been now forced to have what you call double track.
Yeah.
It tells you that they rushed it.
They say it's because how successful this has been.
No, that's not it. Again, it's the same philosophy. What is worth doing is worth doing well. That's why in our time, knowing the resource envelope that was available, we say, you know what, start first and foremost with the day students. Because after all, they mostly are needy. Then the next thing you may be doing is to thinking about maybe people who in the basic sector have had challenges paying their fees. And you can find a lot of them maybe in the public sector. For example, if you go to, for example, Morning Star, or you go to Queensland, or you go to Ridge, and many of these basic schools, a lot of them, I'm not saying everyone, the majority of them, maybe 70% of them, are able to pay sometimes 2,000 a term. Now you actually forget about all that they say because I need vote the following election. All of you, even though you're paying 2,000, forget, don't pay 2,000, I will pay 1,000 for you a term. And they're supposed to applaud you. Oh yeah, it's similar to, for example, what happened during the last time when NPP was in power. When they took school feeding program and they took it to Achimota School, my alma mater. Achimota school feeding. With that quality of food. Achimota students have nothing to do with that. Because the food they eat at home is far, far better than what is being served. When we came, what did you do?
I can't condemn school
hold on, but just hold on, you're not listening fully. When we came in, what we did? We took it away from Achimota School and sent it to the community that truly need it. Schools that truly need it. That's what you do when you have compassion. That's what you do when you are interested in doing things that are right, as opposed to doing things just for vote. So I'm telling you, we are dealing with a bunch of people whose obsession is vote.
I need to wrap up, but the last question I'm asking you is, what would this government, if the NDC were in power today, what would they have done differently on a single main project this government is pursuing?
Which is what? Which is the single main project?
I'm saying free SHS, for example.
But exactly, that's what. But free SHS, we explained to you the process. That's why we understood it to be a gradualist process.
Okay.
Starting first and foremost with people who are day students. Then the next one, you want to look at the people who are coming from the basic sector and make sure that the needier one among them are taken care of.
Okay.
Because it's all about resource availability.
Would the NDC revert to that?
No, we have indicated already that we're going to definitely have a wider consultation And you know already that there's a lot of calls. ISA just made a recent call. So many other bodies are making calls for review. And anything that you do, you clearly have to have review. So NDC definitely will have a review in order to bring an improvement.
The Honorable Fifi Franklin, I need to add that.
I know, right?
Kwetey, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's always a pleasure.
Folks, that's where we end today's edition of UPfront. Many thanks to you for joining us on this edition.